In the stories that shaped the week, an RT correspondent presses the U.S. State Department for evidence to support its allegations that Russia's been targeting hospitals in Syria. This is the response she got.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you who are representing independent media outlets.
Hold on. She's a journalist, just like the rest of us are, so it's, she's asking pointed questions, but they're not,
from a state-owned outlet.
But they're not
from a state-owned outlet.
The questions
that's not
that she's asking are not out of line.
Amid street protests and clashes with police, Barack Obama bids goodbye to his European counterparts on a farewell tour to the continent. And voting for the center-right presidential nomination opens in France, with the Republican Party holding primaries for the first time in its history. This is the Weekly on RT International, a wrap-up of the top stories from the past 7 days and right up to the moment developments as well. I'm Ewan O'Neill. Hello and welcome. This week, the U.S. State Department lashed out at RT after we repeatedly asked for evidence to back up the department's allegations that Russia bombed several hospitals in Syria, an accusation Moscow denies. The department spokesperson went as far as to say RT will no longer be treated the same as other news outlets. Our Washington correspondent, Gayane Chichikan, gave us her first-hand account of the briefing.
Took some pressing and effort to get specifics. As you know, State Department's John Kirby has accused Russia of hitting 5 hospitals in Syria within the past few days. When asked by another journalist in which cities, Mr. Kirby did not seem to know or think it was necessary to share such specifics. I followed up on my colleague's question. Here.
Don't you think it is important to give a specific list of hospitals that you're accusing Russia of hitting? Those are grave accusations.
I'm not making those accusations. I'm telling you, we've seen reports from credible aid organizations that 5 hospitals and a clinic, at least one clinic.
In what cities, at least?
You can go look at the information that many of the Syrian relief agencies are putting out there publicly. We're getting our information from them too. These reports.
But you're citing those reports without giving any specifics.
Because we believe these agencies are credible, and because we have other sources of information that back up what we're seeing from some of these reports. And you know what? Why don't you ask? Well, here's a good question. Why don't you ask your defense ministry what they're doing and see if you can get? No.
If you give a specific list of hospitals, my colleagues who are listening hopefully would be able to go and ask Russian officials about a specific list of hospitals that
you work for Russia Today, right? Isn't that your agency?
Correct.
And so, why shouldn't you ask your government the same kinds of questions that you're standing here asking me? Ask them about their military activities. Get them to tell you what, or to deny what they're doing.
When I ask for specifics, it seems your response is, why are you here? Well, you are leveling that accusation.
No,
and
ma'am.
if you give specifics, my colleagues would be able to ask Russian officials.
Once again, you're just wrong. I'm not leveling those accusations. Relief agencies that we find credible are leveling those accusations.
Furthermore, Mr. Kirby made it clear, had the questions come from somebody else, another journalist, somebody not working for RT, he would have answered differently.
Be careful about saying your defense minister and things like that. I mean, she's a journalist, just like the rest of us are, so it's, she's asking pointed questions, but they're not,
from a state-owned outlet.
But they're not.
From a state-owned outlet.
The questions that she's asking are not out of line.
I didn't say the questions were out of line.
Okay.
I didn't say the questions were out of line.
Okay.
But I'm not.
Oh no, I understand.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you who are representing independent media outlets.
Hold on, but look, they're. Well, we can talk about this later offline, but the question is not an inappropriate question to ask.
Well, following the briefing, Gayane received an apology from the State Department. She also got an email from them with details about the 5 hospitals they believe were hit by Russian airstrikes. It said 3 of the hospitals were in a Tarab, that's just outside Aleppo, and that another 2 hospitals and a mobile clinic in the Idlib province were hit, allegedly resulting in several deaths and rendering the medical facilities out of service. Well, to support the claims, the department cited a group affiliated with the World Health Organization. Well, we then contacted the WHO ourselves. They did confirm that 5 hospitals were attacked. But they said they were not in a position to specify what caused the damage to the hospitals or to make any accusations. Well, evidence is not what the U.S. State Department is interested in. That's how former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras responded when asked about the accusations made.
Factual basis of these accusations is weak. That's not what's important here for the Obama administration. It is to throw the accusation, stir up a dust cloud. You know, here we have a Russian-supported Syrian offensive against al-Qaeda in Aleppo, which is strikingly similar to what is going on with the U.S. support for the Iraqi offensive against ISIS in Mosul. There's all sorts of understanding. In the case of Mosul, you have an offensive against a populated area held by a vicious terrorist group. No understanding of that situation when it comes to Aleppo, just unsupported accusations and not even identifying the sources of the accusation. It's hard to believe that this is being done in good faith.
Well, Russia's foreign minister reacted to the harsh response RT's correspondent got during the State Department briefing. Sergei Lavrov called Mr. Kirby's comments inappropriate for a diplomat.
I believe it's unacceptable. I believe this is really not reflecting the American proclaimed values. And I hope that this was not the position of the State Department, and this is certainly not the position of the Secretary of State, I can assure you.
Are you going to bring up this topic in the future? You said that this wasn't the right venue, but in the future, do you think?
Well, we're not going to start every day by condemning Mr. Kirby. I believe Mr. Kirby must be disciplined by his own superiors who respond for what he is doing and how he is doing his job.
Well, Russia's foreign minister was not the only high-level official to react. President Obama also appeared to have something to say about it.
In an age where there's so much active misinformation, and it's packaged very well, and it looks the same when you see it on a Facebook page or you turn on your television, where some zealousness on the part of a U.S. official is equated with constant and severe repression elsewhere.
Clearly, there are massive polarizing differences of opinion as to how the war in Syria is going, who is responsible, and how civilians are being caught up in this appalling and brutal war. And that's why it's very important for companies like RT to have access to be able to challenge officials when they make those sort of allegations.
The job of a State Department spokesman is to answer questions of journalists. That is the main job of a spokesman. And so I think what we just saw was someone who wasn't able to carry out his job. You know, that basically is undiplomatic and shows that this person wasn't able to do his job, and was also, I think, pointing accusations at Russia which are just, come out of anti-Russian sentiment without there being any clear evidence to back up those claims.
Miguel Francis Santiago now takes a look at how Washington separates journalists into 2 camps, those who get the authorities' approval and those who don't.
What happens when you ask the State Department to back up its accusations with evidence? You risk being labeled an outcast.
I'm not going to put Russia Today on the same level with the rest of you.
Oh, and why is that?
A state-owned outlet,
but they're
Matt,
not,
from a state-owned outlet.
An interesting argument, except that RT isn't actually state-owned, but publicly funded, just like BBC, Deutsche Welle, or the U.S.'s own Voice of America. Not sure the State Department would try dodging questions from them in that way. So it looks like some outlets are in favor and others are not. And the State Department has repeatedly made it clear which group RT belongs to.
Again, another ridiculous question.
But what is the response?
I think we're
What
ready
is
to
the
move on
response?
to a new Ukraine question. Go ahead, Elise.
The situation where the U.S.
I'm going to give you
invites
just one more,
forces-
honestly, and then that's it, okay?
Sure.
You have to be looking at these questions and almost laughing to yourself, don't you? I mean, they're absolutely crazy.
You're happy when you want to evade a question.
No,
You've
no,
done
I'm
that
not attacking
before.
you. I'm not attacking you.
I'm going to answer the question in the way I think is appropriate, and I just did, and I'm going to move on
Which is
now.
not answering.
But if you dare talk to RT anyway, here's another reason to think again. You could upset the American president. Remember Obama hitting out at Donald Trump for his appearance on this channel?
The doctor, who just last week went on Russian state television to talk down our military and to curry favor with Vladimir Putin.
Now, the media was swift to label Trump Russia's puppet, even though the interview was actually with Larry King, one of the most respected journalists in the West, who happens to have a show on RT. Meanwhile, some U.S. officials are even scared they'll lose their jobs if they work with RT. This is an email we received from Pentagon, apparently by mistake, after we requested to attend their media event. No way are we going to support this. My G2, or intelligence operations, would kill me. Also, Rupli TV is a Russian propaganda platform. If things carry on like this...
We will get to the point when, while holding a press conference, officials around the world will set up special tables or even rooms for the out-of-favor journalists.
So how does this caste system of journalists work, and how do you become untouchable?
Most of those journalists who turn up there wouldn't dream of ever asking a terribly important question and putting those press spokesmen on the spot. So whenever a journalist does that, breaks the house rules, if you like, then they immediately get ostracized and taught a lesson.
Oh, well, looks like we're just bad learners. Miguel Francis Santiago, RT.
To another of our head stories. Barack Obama travelled to Europe this week to bid farewell to his counterparts there just a few months before he hands over the White House keys to Donald Trump. Now, his final trip to the continent was not without incident, as furious protests erupted in Athens after he touched down on Tuesday. Then, from Greece, he travelled to Germany to meet the person he's described as his closest international partner, Angela Merkel.